Hi, David. This is
Hey
our
there.
friend David Buckster. We're so happy to be with you today to talk about something that's very dear to our hearts, which is the Loving Relationships training. And this is
Right.
created by Sandra Ray around 1974, and she's been teaching it around the world for 50 years now. And I know you've taken the LRT many times, so you're
Yeah.
familiar with what happens in that weekend training. It's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday training, Friday evening, Saturday all day, and Sunday all day.
Right. I've
Yeah.
done this.
You had contacted me to make a description about the LRT. Um, should we start there?
I think we could do that. I think that I could tell you what I think I've learned from the LRT and have you kind of explain that.
Okay.
Might be a start. But honestly, I feel that you and Sandra are the world's foremost authorities on loving relationships. And that the approach that you have to loving relationships is more sensible and more powerful than anything I've ever come across.
Well,
And
thank
it's
you.
something that people should enjoy. I think that a couple things about it that you could talk a little bit more about. One thing is that you guys have made complex metaphysical principles accessible to me, how the world works, and how spirituality functions in the world, and how it's part of relationships. So one thing you might do is talk about how you create that in LRTs.
Okay. How spirituality functions in relationships. Well, I think the principles that we teach people in the LRT, we try to keep them non-denominational.
Sure.
So it's not Christian or Muslim or Hindu or Buddhist. It's more universal. We try to talk about it in terms of a life force or greater intelligence that you can tap into. And you really need some of those principles to make a relationship work smoothly. But most of what the LRT is about, we do have a section, we call it the God section, which is about spirituality.
Right.
Most of it is about family patterns, how we inherit different behaviors from our parents, from our family, from our upbringing, from our past. And we try to help people look at that because some of these patterns we're doing unaware. We're not realizing that we're recreating our family dynamics, our parents' dynamics. So we try to help people look at that. And when you look at that, you can let it go. You can change it. If you don't know you have it, you can't change it. But if you know you're doing this, then you can begin to change. So the LRT is set up very specifically. Friday, we look at how our thoughts produce our results, right? And a lot of
Right.
people aren't even familiar with that. They don't realize that how they think and how they feel is the frequency they put out that attracts their experiences in life. So we help people look at that Friday night. We help them to be honest and be communicating something about the status of their current relationship, or if they're not in a relationship, do they want one, kind of thing. So we have them introduce themselves and just be honest about their relationships, what's going on in their life with relationships now. I mean, plenty of people say, "Oh, yeah, I'm in a marriage, but we don't get along. We're not communicating, blah blah blah." So we want to help people just be honest about what's their status quo, right? So that's Friday night, and then Saturday we deal with what Sandra calls the old paradigm. Now, the old paradigm is the paradigm of our parents. And our parents, they never had any self-examining techniques. They never had, enlightened self-development workshops. They never had any way of turning within and looking and changing things within. They didn't have those tools. They didn't have those assets available to them. And basically they were just doing what their parents did. So Sandra has gone into these patterns, 14 patterns that you commonly see in relationships. And so for Saturday morning, we go into that, we examine those, people look at those, they say, yep, that's me, or yep, that's my parents. So she gives the basics of how relationships, in the world of the ego work. And so that's very enlightening. So we do that Saturday. And then Sunday, we look at what's called the new paradigm relationship, which is, we call it a holy relationship. Now, even if you're quote unquote an atheist, you wanna get at something, a power kind of greater than yourself, a life force, right. a life force greater than yourself, that's benevolent, that's happy, that's safe, that's conflict-free. We try to get people in a conflict-free state in their relationships, their marriages, their family dynamics. And, in order to be conflict-free, you have to clear some things, which, if you have guilt, you won't be free of conflict. If you have anger, you won't be free of conflict. If you have a lot of fear and anxiety, you won't be free of conflict. So those three things, fear, guilt, and anger, we really help people clear that in themselves and then in their relationships. So this is the main work of the LRT. And one way we help people do this is Sandra Ray is the mother of breath work. Now you see a breath worker on every corner, but in the beginning in 1974, it was not discovered yet. And she and Leonard Orr were the pioneers in this field of breath work, which is kind of a melding of psychology and yoga, meditation. Doing like a breathing meditation to clear some psychological issues that go all the way back to your birth. So they studied what were the psychological factors in your conception, your time in the womb, your delivery at birth, and what happened after your birth, because those very much formulated opinions about life, even though you didn't have language. So they called it rebirthing back then, but now it's called breath work. And Sandra was at the very beginning of that. She wrote the first book with Leonard on that, Rebirthing in the New Age. So she's really the mother of breath work. And that's a fact. We're not bragging. That just is so. So we use the breath work to, after each day we've looked at all these things, you need something to clear it and let it go. So we use the session of breath work at the end of the day to help people let go, clear, forgive, that sort of thing.
I've always found breath work to be very healing. And one of the few ways that you can actually access and process emotional healing. And you feel the change right away.
Yes, powerful. So true. And even conventional psychologists now are using breath work more in their practice. They're acknowledging that there has to be some way that people can look at their inner demons, but also let them go. It's not enough just to look at your crap, so to speak. You have to be able to throw it out. And the breath work helps you really release it from your mind, from your body, from even the cells. And yeah, so even scientists are seeing that memory is stored in cells, not just in your brain, it's stored in every cell of your body. And this breath work helps the cells open up and release these memories.
Wow.
So we use that quite effectively. So, David, I'm going to put Sandra Ray on here for a couple of minutes, and you can ask her anything you want.
Wow. All right. Thank you. Hi, Sandra.
Oh, hi, David. Good to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you for this.
Yeah.
I started going to LRTs in 1993, maybe 1993 or 4. I've been several times. You've always been my teacher. And I thought it would be interesting just to tell people a little bit about what changes in their life after they've begun doing work with you, and what changes do people find in their relationships?
Yeah, okay. I'll talk about that. At first, I just want to tell you the funny story of how I created the LRT, and then we'll
good.
Yeah, I mean, I went to California and I had just been divorced and I was looking for help, in relationships. And there was all these new seminars like S showing up, and there was no trainings on relationships. So I kept saying, where is the training on relationships? And people said, oh, everyone is too screwed up in that area to teach it. And I thought,
Yeah.
and oh my God, does it have to be me? And I was interested in that subject, And then when I started rebirthing people and I got them down to their birth and I saw how their birth was affecting relationships, I would give a talk on that, to people. And I went to Hawaii and I had about 30 people in the room and they said, Sandra, this explains everything. And we want to bring all our friends to you tomorrow. And, they had the same reaction. So that's when I knew I could write a training. So that's the kind of the history.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. So now ask me a question again.
What kind of changes in either my life or in people's relationships happen after they've been to an LRT?
Well, yeah, hopefully. Hopefully our goal is that they could get the relationship they want and that it would be peaceful and not a conflict relationship. That's our goal. And people do achieve that, although some people need to keep reviewing the LRT several times. They might not get that in the first training. I even take the training over and over as a student, even though I channeled it, I like to take it. So every time I do it, I learn something, So for me, it's brought me a lot of joy. And, we always want people to have more joy in their life and their relationships. And we try to help people figure out what the block is to not getting what they want. If they don't get what they want, they're blocked, okay? So a lot of it has to do with their what we call personal lies, which is their worst thought about themselves. So I think that that's one thing that really produces change in people that they don't get anywhere else. Because as far as I know, there's nobody else teaching personal lies except some rebirthers do know how to do that. And the personal lie is like your worst thought about yourself, and it's an addiction. And, so people need help with that. But a lot of people don't even know that exists. Like they might have a thought, I'm bad or I'm wrong or I'm guilty. And their whole life is about that thought. And so what the LRT does and what we feel produces change is helping people get off that thought. It clears up a lot of different areas in their life. Just that one thing, And then when you identify all the patterns that Marcus would mention on Saturday, and you choose out of them, you get a totally new experience in relationships. It's not the same. Most people are rerunning their parents' relationship or their relationship with their parents. They keep recreating. And they always set up their mate to be their parent. So one of the changes people experience is they can see them doing that pattern and they can stop it. And before, they're just going on automatic and, they don't even know they have the pattern if they haven't taken the LRT. So one of the changes is people wake up. I think that's the main thing. They wake up. They wake up to what's off, and then they can get another way of living, in a way. Because all there is relationships. You have a relationship with everybody and everything. So it does affect your whole life, this training, not just you and your partner.
I think that you taught me how to listen and pay attention to what's going on in a relationship and what's going on with me and maybe the other person. And I think I became much more conscious about just listening and asking what's happening, much more so than I ever was before. And I think the other thing that you taught me that I always remember is that loving relationships bring up what's not loving
Yeah,
about
love,
your.
yeah, we always say that Friday night. Love brings up anything unlike itself. And so if you know that, and somebody taught you that, then you can see it coming up and do something about it, like getting rebirth. If people don't even know that one truth, then there's stuff that comes up in a relationship, and what they do, that at first the love is very, very strong in the romantic period, which only lasts about 2 months, by the way, because of this. And the energy is so strong that your mate's energy pours into you and pushes up your subconscious crap. Well, what people do then is they fight. If they, that's when they
Yeah,
start
right.
fighting. That's when they start fighting, because all their stuff is coming up, and they don't know how to avoid fights. We also teach people how to give up anger permanently, and
Right.
that's another huge change for people. So I think people are become aware that love brings up anything unlike itself is a huge change in their life. If they understand that point, then they won't get so mad, and they'll just say, "Oh, I need to get rebirth. My stuff is coming up. I need to breathe, or I need to do an action here." So I think people get more conscious about where they're off, and that they find out there's something they can do about it.
You give people the resources to be able to process things that come up immediately with each other. And so
Right.
you give people actual solutions to how to get through more difficult parts of their relationships.
Right. Yeah. And we give techniques for communication improvement, and we give techniques to solve problems, like when you have how to avoid a disagreement. Like most people just fight it out, and maybe the person who's the most controlling wins and the other one gives
Right.
up. That's no way to live. So we give techniques, some of them I learned from my guru Babaji, about how to have conflict resolution, actual techniques that work. So I think that saves people a lot of time.
Right. I think that you give people an opportunity to access what's really going on with themselves, and you give them valuable resources to process things in relationships over one quick weekend.
Yeah.
And that way, I think that that's what's been so successful about the LRT, is that it creates great results really quickly and
Yeah.
gives you like amazing skills in a short period of time.
Yeah, and one improvement I've made over the last few years is more on the holy relationship and the new paradigm. I originally taught the training, I hadn't integrated what the Course in Miracles says so much, but then I have improved this over the last few years by adding the new paradigm, what it is, how to create it, and what is a holy relationship. Okay.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to hear.